All right, welcome to our breakout session featuring the amazing Devin Owens. If you happen to be in the wrong room, please click the red leave button and then click leave this breakout room, and we will send you back to the main session where some of our on-brand staff will assist you in getting into the session that you wanted. Although if you accidentally click this one, we are happy to have you as well, and you won't want to miss this conversation. I think it was a happy accident. I clicked record already. We're going to get this session going. Drawn to all things earth tones and eco-friendly, Devin has a heart-led entrepreneur and minimalist who enjoys pushing herself and others to new limits. Ask her about her scuba diving certification. If we have time, I can't wait to hear that. The proud founder of Less the Agency, to her team, Devin brings more than 10 years of communications experience with a knack for brand development and copywriting. She is committed to elevating the stories and lived experience of BIPOC-owned brands and companies while actively dismantling the systems which oppress these voices from being heard. Devin is a 2018 graduate of the University of Nebraska at Omaha and a 2012 graduate of Benton High School. Though grateful for her academic endeavors and accomplishments, she believes the best teacher is seeing the world. To date, Devin has solo traveled to more than 11 countries, including Senegal, Iceland, Morocco, and the Netherlands, sharing those stories on her own Instagram account, Days with Dev. In her free time, she enjoys watching nature and travel-related documentaries, planning her sustainable home build, and snuggling with her pup, Penelope. It is all you.
Awesome. Okay. So I see there's some folks from my team, here, which is exciting. So I just want to shout those folks out. Hey, Cameron. Hey, Ariana. I think that's it. And hey, everybody else. My best friend is on here. So I'm just glad people showed up. So if you don't know me, you'll probably get a little taste of me. I aspire to be like the chillest person ever. So this will be a very open conversation and one that I want folks to engage with me. I do have slides prepared, but this is not one of those things where you can like tap in and like be doing 6 other things. So the same way that like my cycle instructor asked us like really plug in, because I've spent some time really thinking about how I could pour value into all of you. So even if your camera is off, I don't care, because I will be on whole meetings with a bonnet doing other stuff like that I don't care about. But just be present and try to find ways that you can take away value from this. So, oh yeah, please do. Oh yeah, Days with Dev is fine, but follow Less the Agency. It's a little bit more curated over there. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and get started. Let's see, share this. Okay, hopefully this, ooh, yes, it does. Thank you, Lord. Okay, so the title of this conversation is going to be The Time for Less is Now. So when I was actually naming my company used to be called Out Loud Communications. Not going to get into the story of that because it's dead and gone at this point. But I was really going through some transformative things as it relates to like minimalism and just decluttering my personal life. And so I asked those closest to me, I was like, what do y'all think about me naming my company Less? And they were like, isn't that a bad thing? Like, why would you want to name your business something that inherently means like deficit, inherently means lower rank? And we'll get into those definitions later. But the more and more that I'm navigating the digital space, not only as a consumer, but as like a business owner and as someone who is leading the development of brands, I really do understand and stand by that the time for less is now. It is time for us to be more intentional and personalized and thoughtful in the way that we are not only creating and outputting, but the way that we are taking care of ourselves and our teams. So that is the time for less is now. Again, my name is Devin Owens and my pronouns are she, hers. So I talked a little bit earlier about like why less, but before we get into this, I really want to delve into the strategies that the digital landscape is going to provide for us and understand like why are we doing this? Like why are we going to pull back? Why are we going to start doing less? And what's the strategy with that? So immediate definitions of this are, let me minimize that really quick. The immediate definitions are minimalism, if you're not familiar, is just a style or technique. A lot of times you'll see this like in design or literature that is characterized by extreme spareness or simplicity. That is like the mood board to my life. I wear black, beige, brown, cream. Like that's all the colors I own. That is the color of my house. It's pretty simple. But then as we get into the definition of sustainability, that is of or relating to a method of harvesting or using a resource so that the resource is not depleted or changed. Anytime I give a definition of sustainability, it's super important for me to like root this in where sustainability comes from and where even minimalism comes from, because these are very hot topic words right now. And I want to put out there and just give honor to the fact that these are like indigenous and brown and black practices that have been going on far before like the minimalist and like rich white men made this cool, right? Like folks, black and brown folks, indigenous folks have been recreating and repurposing things so that they're mindful of what we're pulling from the earth for I don't know how long, a long time, longer than me. So I just like to put that out there. This is not anything that is new or recently invented. And so then when we get to the definition of less, it is constituting a more limited number or amount of lower rank, degree, or importance of reduced size, extent, and degree. So probably by no means anything that you are unfamiliar with, but just wanted to provide all of these definitions so we could level set our conversation for today. Okay, so as I mentioned, I have a whole company named Less, and I am going to prove to you today that is not a bad thing. Quite easily, it's just easier to buy into sustainability, especially as it pertains to the environment. It's easy to throw a recycling bin in the office. It's easy to, you know, participate in any sort of like recycling things. But when it comes to like human capital, we don't really have conversations on what sustainability for that means. And we'll talk about that later. But even minimalism as a practice for business is becoming a little bit more commonplace. However, when we think of doing less, like there's a hesitation that comes in, and it's like rightfully so. People are like, oh, wait, I'm doing less. So what does this mean for myself? And what does this mean for my business or company? And so this is where I want y'all to get interactive, because I am not going to sit here and talk to a screen for 50 minutes. So the first thing we're going to do is do some true or false, and I'm going to have to minimize, hold on. Yeah, I'm going to have to like do that, and y'all are going to see the realness of like my time. So true or false, please leave your response in the chat. I'm going to do my best to see if I can check that. If I do less, I'll receive less. So you can either just enter in true or false. Okay, responses are coming in. Okay, we'll move on to the second one. If I post less often on social media, my followers and community will not grow. True or false? Okay. The next one is, to beat the algorithm on social media, it's essential that my brand or company post every single day. True or false? Okay, fair enough. I'm seeing some things roll in. Our constituents, so our customers, our clients, whomever that may be for your brand or company, places trust in us because we have a large service offering or product offering. Okay, the next one is, I'm a small business or a freelancer or someone with a smaller team. Therefore, it's essential that I utilize every digital platform to advertise my services or products. True or false? Okay. No one will know what products or services I offer if I don't talk about them frequently. True or false? Awesome. Okay, so that brings me to the end of those questions. go back to my present mode here. So here's the thing, is all of these statements are actually false. So kind of looking at the chat, I saw that majority of you are kind of catching on to what I was getting there. But now that you know that these things are false, the question is like, how do we move forward in strategy? So if we're not posting every single day, if we're not on every single platform, if we're not constantly talking about whether that's using like more traditional forms of marketing and advertising, like if we're not constantly being present, how are people finding out about us? How are we intentionally building community? And so this is what I want to offer up to you today for your brand and companies, and just want to outline the rest of our conversation for our time today. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about finding the right platform for your brand or company. And I'm actually going to give you a case study where I've worked with and supported a client who only uses one platform. So it could be just one, like that is like a mind-blowing thing for folks sometimes, but it is totally possible. And then thinking about how we can develop a digital strategy that is tailored for your brand or company. There are 1,000,001 ways and 1,000,001 bits of advice that exist on, as I say, Joe Biden's internet, that is going to tell you how to do social media, how to successfully win in the digital marketplace, how you can show up and be present. But the truth is there's only one way that is going to work specifically for your brand or company, given the unique product and service offerings that you have. Then we'll get into creating content with intention. What does this mean, especially when we're thinking about like slowing down and being more intentional in the development? And then finally, keeping sustainability at the forefront of our conversation and thinking beyond the environment. I touched on this a little bit earlier, and I'm definitely going to maybe tap into some of the folks that I'm so lucky to work with to talk about what it means to sustainably operate within a business. For us, that looks like a 4-day work week. For us, that's also being completely remote. So providing some opportunity for us to noodle some ideas on what that could be for you as well. So the first thing we talked about is what's the right platform for my brand or company. So what we won't do, and I'm very big into just level setting and not over promising, what we won't do in this time is develop a comprehensive strategy for your brand or company. But what we can do is identify a series of questions that are going to help us get closer. So we're going to kind of, again, be interactive here and just spend some time asking ourselves, whether you're taking notes on a notepad or elsewhere, but asking ourselves, one, have we completed market research to understand the behaviors of our desired audience? This is something that I think is so overlooked, especially recently, just because we think that just because someone is on Instagram or Facebook or Clubhouse or whatever platform that's digital, that they have shared interests, that just because they show up there, one strategy will work to reach them all. So if you haven't done market research to understand where your constituents are showing up, what sort of content speaks most to them, and sort of going with this all or none approach, you are going to miss it. So that's the first question, is have we completed that market research? Second is, what content do we want to share most often? I think I got at least 6 text messages the same day that Instagram announced that the app was no longer going to be really focusing on photography, as it started to shift towards the shopping features as well as video. I had clients saying, do we need to ditch photos? How do we need to pivot? And the reality of it is I really encourage folks to not pivot to what the social media apps are using, but pivot and stick to what your customers and constituents are most responding to. For some of those brands, it does make sense to do reels that is behind the scenes, showing how that product is made. For others, it is a really captivating photo that captures the beauty of a particular product. So it just kind of makes sense to do what works for you and not what works for everyone else in the world. So again, what sort of content do we want to share? And thinking about what that process is going to be to develop it. If you know that you want to create video, it probably would be a great idea to not start today for something that is for tomorrow. And we'll talk a little bit about that more as we get into sustainability and developing process. But thinking about what content do you want to have, and then what do you want to share most often out of that pool of content. And then thinking about which digital platforms are you already utilizing? Do you already have a large followership on Facebook or Instagram, or is it Clubhouse? Whatever it is, thinking about what's working there and trying to see if you can pull strategy and process from those particular applications and platforms, and then applying it to others. And then if there's others that you are interested in and you're like, oh, maybe we could try this out, starting to do some like research and even engaging with your audience to say, hey, if we started posting on here, if we started showing up in this space, how would you like to engage with us, if at all? Nope. So ruling out to me is the easiest part. I love to say the word no. It's something that has just become more exciting for me as I navigate entrepreneurship, but something that my mentors always tell me is to rule out the ridiculous, like take out the most ridiculous option. And so if it doesn't make sense for your brand or company to do, don't do it. Like, just say no. Just say no, it doesn't make sense for my burger shop, whatever your company may be, to have a Clubhouse chat room. It doesn't make sense for us, and you don't have to be present. So some tips to kind of identify like what those platforms might be for your brand or company is the development process is not streamlined or efficient. And like layman's terms is, if it is more of a headache, more of a pain in the ass to create content for this specific platform, we really need to sit and evaluate if it's necessary and even worthwhile to do it. We talk a lot about how we cannot get time back. And so just making sure that you are doing something that is efficient, that you can put a process to and do it the same way every single time. The next thing is an internal role is modified or stretched to develop content. This is something coming from the nonprofit sector that I really had to unlearn and process as I transitioned from working in the nonprofit sector to then working in as a business owner, is I was so used to being all things to everyone. I did a little bit of this, I did a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. And I'm a big believer that a jack of all trades is a master of none. So like, what is your thing? What is that person in your company's role to do? If they are hired to be a photographer, it does not make sense for them to be writing copy. If they were hired as a copywriter, it does not make sense for them to be out doing photos. Now, in my case, sometimes you have folks who are multi-talented and can bring a robust offering to your brand or company, but really working to narrow what people are doing so they can best work in what they are talented at. The next thing is we don't have budget for it. This is another big thing that is kind of hard to swallow pill if you're not ready to have that conversation. But I like to talk about the uncomfortable stuff at the top. If you cannot afford to do it, if it is something that is going to put you in the red, if it's going to have you crunching pennies the next month, it might not be a worthwhile investment. And alternative to that is the way that we can all pick up a cell phone and take a pretty decent photo or even edit video on our phones. If you don't have budget for it, think about ways that you can alternatively produce it. Maybe you can't afford a professional photographer to come out to every event for your brand or company, but maybe you have someone on your team who enjoys taking pictures and is comfortable snapping a few that you can share. Maybe you don't have the budget to have a video editor, but you could find someone or even work with an external partner who you could pay to develop and create those videos for you. So not always having the budget doesn't mean let's not do it, but let's get creative in the ways that we're approaching it and making sure that we're not putting ourselves in a mindset of deficit to get there. And I think the very last one is probably the most important to me, is it doesn't best serve our community, our audience, or our customers. I don't believe in self-serving content. I don't believe in filler content. And if it's not adding anything, we really have to be introspective and ask the question, what value does this offer? Because part of less is pulling back from the noise that is all on social media and any other digital platform to say, okay, if we're putting something out there, how can it benefit our community? What specific call to action is there, allowing folks to take action immediately or do something that can benefit them or their immediate community? Any questions on that? I have my little thing minimized, so I can't I have to open up. the chat and like stuff like that?
Nothing yet, Devin.
Okay.
But feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll
yeah, because we're rolling. Like time is moving. Okay. So the next part is insert the strategy here. And so this is the part that I think is hard for a lot of people, especially those who are kind of like in those like digital roles, to understand and identify. You can be on the right platform and still show up in the wrong way. You could be, and even like if we just separate this from like this particular conversation, you can be at the wrong job and doing the wrong job. Like you can be in a place that like, okay, this feels right, but you're not doing it in a way that's correct and really meshing with the flow of how things could go. So now that we've considered where to show up, I want you all to consider like how to show up. When we had the conversation with Derek earlier, talking about like recruitment of minority creatives and just business owners in our city, it's not that there is a deficit. There's not a shortage of these folks in our community. It's sometimes where are you looking and how are you doing it? So in that particular case, you're in the right place. You're in Omaha where there's an abundance of creatives and talent in this city, but how are we going about the recruitment process? How are we going about making sure that we're paying freelancers and paying photographers and any sort of talent or expertise? So when I encourage people to like show up on the right platform, some of the steps that you can do to get there is developing a sustainable posting schedule that allows your audience to know what to expect and when. This is one that can be a little difficult to stick to and a little difficult to find value in, considering just the instantaneous nature of the way that social media and digital platforms generally are. So if you are on your Instagram, when you're scrolling, it doesn't seem to have any order, but you know that your favorite influencer or you know that your favorite brand has this dropping every Tuesday. So you are thinking about it, even though as you're having that digital experience, you're not necessarily actively seeking it out. So that can be difficult to kind of see on the consumer end of it, but on the producing side of it, it is really beneficial to try to find some sort of habit, some sort of system that you can do something the same way. Because then also when you pull back and look at it, when you have systems and processes in place, you're able to measure it. When you're doing things that are far more sporadic, you can't take a step back at that course at the end of the 3 months and be like, okay, we did a posting schedule of every other day at this time. When we did this, this was the result. If it's chaotic and frantic, it's very difficult to measure. You will get analytics, you will get trends, you can export that information and look at it there. But in order to really find something that is sustainable, you have to do it with consistency. So to that next point is leveraging automation where it makes sense. Again, this is something that I learned when we talk about sustainability of like human capital later in our conversation today. This is where automation will make more sense. But if you don't have to do it yourself, like as in me, Devin, if I don't have to manually type a post or if I don't have to manually send an email, why are we doing it? Like, I remember, watching videos when I was younger, like, AI and Bicentennial Man, and like really being afraid and concerned about like what automation and what like AI would do for us. But now, getting older and my back, doesn't hit the same way when I wake up, I am trying to do as less as possible and preserve energy and really give my time to things that need a deeper level of intention. And quite honestly, making a social media post or sending an email or following up with, a marketing campaign is not the best use of my time. So looking at automation and how you can develop those processes that are automated to even make sense of that for you. So the point that I have below that is, can you schedule a week or even a month's worth of content while actively responding to your community? So you have to marry this idea of automation on one hand, but also like being present. Like you can't just, all right, we've scheduled everything. let's go to happy hour and cornhole. Like, no, you still have to show up and be present for people, because your constituents, now that they know, okay, they're here, I'm engaging with the content, I have questions, I want to be heard, I want to feel valued by this brand or company that I'm investing in or I'm choosing to be a part of. So it is sometimes that response is day to day, or set community expectations, whereas folks know that you are going to respond in this period of time or in these days of the week. And I'll get to that later in the case study. And then don't be afraid of outsourcing. You don't have to be all things. I think it is more than okay. And I think it's indicative of leadership and just personal development when you're able to reflect internally and say that, hey, I, Devin, am a bomb copywriter, but when it comes to Instagram Reels, I'm going to throw my phone out the window. This is not a fake example. This is real life. I cannot stand Instagram Reels, TikTok. I don't like video editing. I think it is the most annoying thing, but don't get me wrong. I will spend an obscene amount of hours scrolling through those things to enjoy them. But on the creation side, I don't. And so I think it's even, when you're looking at your team and hiring out, those sort of creative roles, digital content strategist or digital, I've had all those titles, is not an all-encompassing thing. Try to find someone who can niche and specialize in something and really give you a depth of knowledge. And then you can go out to engage local creatives and bring in that talent and find interns and find mentors and those freelancers to strengthen the quality and consistency of your brand's content. The agency has recently hired a social media video editor. Her title is very long, social media video editor. And it's changed the game for us. I don't have to stress at 12 a.m. in the morning about developing a 15-second reel, because I have someone who can do it like that and enjoys it and finds, the time within her schedule to make it happen in a way that makes sense. So thinking about outsourcing and how you can really get to, okay, if I can do less of this, then I can do more of this. So we'll get a little bit more into like that language that I'm getting to of like less of this, more of this in a second, but just wanted to offer that up for y'all.
We do have a question, Devin, to that point that we've just been talking about. Cameron says she spent most of her early career being everything to everyone. How do you suggest empowering your team members and employees to show up in the best and most sustainable way? I find even working for a great intentional company like the agency, I still extend myself beyond my capacity. And yes, we can all relate to that, Cameron.
I think that's a good question. And it's such a hard muscle to flex, because outside of my role at the agency, I also serve at Marion High School as the director of diversity and inclusion. And so the way that I've set up, like even my work life is very compartmentalized. Within the agency, I am not the DEI person. At Marion, I am not the marketing person. And actually recently we, had some like changes in structure, and there was like an opportunity that's like, oh, I could do marketing at Marion. But I'm like, no, Devin, like you have worked to compartmentalize this. So I think even thinking about all the things that you're good at and you so desperately want to pour, what did you get hired to do at that place? Like how are you called to serve there? And I'm using language that can seem a little bit like spiritual and high level, but that's just the way I talk. So here it is. But what did they ask you to do there? And if it falls outside of that, you have to ask yourself, okay, if I offer this up once, know that there's possibility that they could ask for it again, or it could be the norm. And that it's a dual responsibility on the leadership of the brand or company to say like, hey, this person, we only really hired them to do this and we love that they're offering it, but we need to either look at the job description or make some changes internally to make sure that we're not, stretching or pulling someone more than they need to be. So I think it's a dual answer there, and ask yourself, what were you called, what were you hired to do there? And then on the other side, there needs to be responsibility from leadership saying like, okay, hey, like we only hired Cameron to do this, so that's what she needs to do. So yeah, that'd be my answer. And I think that's something that a lot of creatives navigate, because that word in itself is like, what is a creative? Like, what is that? Is that a writer? Is that an editor? Like, what is that? And so I think, especially when you are joining spaces that are not inherently creative, and I've worked in those spaces where they're like, oh, okay, we just need to hire a person who does that. It can sort of quickly become an all-encompassing role. So I even suggest, one thing that my former boss did really well is we checked in on my job description on a quarterly basis, and like literally would highlight all of the things that I was doing, and then the things that I wasn't. If two times that we checked in back to back, I had not been updating the website, maybe it was time to think about, does that even need to be in my job description? Does that even need to be a standard at which I'm held to if I'm not doing it? Because what you don't want to do is let those check-ins and let those things slide by. And then you get to like your 1 year or your 5 year or your 10 years will be a long time. And you're like, oh, wait, why hasn't the website been updated? Why haven't you done this? And you're like, but I haven't been doing this. So kind of advocating for yourself in that way too. In the interest of time, I'm going to boogie on to this case study. So 2 Days Off is a sustainable-based clothing brand that is in LA. Gina is the founder. She's a woman of color who's really committed to bringing folks clothing that is effortless and easy and flowing. And so this is the example I wanted to share with you all that talked about they are only on one platform and very intentional, and like, we don't want to do anything else because this is where our community is. So 2 Days Off is actually only on Instagram. The only reason they have a Facebook page is because you have to have a Facebook business page to do like the marketing thing. So it's like a dummy account. Other than that, they don't really utilize any other platforms. And so that is something that they've been successful. They have a very strong and connected community that really buys into the messaging of them. And they've intentionally done that through not only the photography, but lives, the development of their website, how they're breaking down, how these clothing items are sourced, what it means when you buy something, also bridging the gap between when we think about sustainable clothing and sustainability as it is anyway, the bias in our mind goes to a very particular type of person and a very particular price point. And so to combat that, they have a community fund where every time you make a purchase, you can help someone who cannot particularly afford these pieces, like right off the bat, access sustainable clothing options. So even like rethinking about the way that we can do community and make sustainability accessible for more people, because that inherently is what is at the heart of it. And so in this particular post, I screenshotted here, it was posted a few days ago. Gina and I have been really thinking about like, we're tired of social media. How can we show up more intentionally? So they've actually made the decision. At first, they were doing what Cameron and my team was working on, a summer slowdown, whereas they were only going to post like maybe once a week, maybe twice, and then have customer service available, Monday through Friday during normal business times to address any like questions or concerns that customers may have. But then, Gina got kind of like 2 weeks into July and she's like, yeah, I think I'm just going to take the entire month of August off. And those sort of decisions, doing less, allows Gina, one, the time she needs personally to sustain herself so she can sustain her business, but then two, she can also pour into other parts of her business. And this is not something if you're just getting started with your brand or it's just getting off the ground and you have 2 Instagram posts and you're going to be like, okay, bye, we're leaving for a month. Not the suggestion here, but really think about how can you build a community that can exist without your everyday omnipresence. How can you build that? Because that's really the purpose. If you have to be in your brand, in your business, in your company every single day, it is not sustainable. And dare I say, it is not successful because you haven't put into place people that can do the work and can keep it going without you. And so I'm really, really proud of Gina for this. I think it's it is a terrific and bold move in a digital era where we're told that you have to be on this and be doing this all the time. So I really encourage you all, if you're interested. They only provide like dresses and like women's garments at this time, but you might have some interest in checking them out. Any questions on that? It was a very quick and high level case study, but just wanted to offer up what that looks like when a brand makes an intentional decision to do less. Because sometimes I think it's very easy to talk about, especially as a marketing agency. I don't have a product that I have to constantly promote. I do have services, but I think it's a little bit sometimes hard to conceptualize what that actually looks like for a brand or company that is selling things.
Devin, this question came in. It's not specific to the case study, but from Jen. Jen is asking, do you feel there's a time and place when you can extend yourself to the maximum? Like, do you go all in for a few events a year or a big campaign? And if you notice you're doing too much, how do you reel it in?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I think that question is one that I even just get by family. They're like, okay, Devin, if you're working less, like when do you actually work? When do you lean in and like get dirty and get messy? And I would say all the time, quite honestly. It's this weird balance of when you work with intention and you only take on things that add value to you and to the client, whatever the product or service is. There are times when inherently we're going to work harder. For my team, it was during like the general and primary elections. We were working with 2 candidates at the time, and we were smacked. Like, it was days where I'm pulling basically all-nighters. But then on the contrary, it's like we're in a slower season right now. You know, it's kind of like that weird midsummer, folks are traveling, the world is opening back up, you know, all those sort of things. And so now is like, okay, we're resting before we get to last quarter. And we know that folks are going to like be back, and we know that it's going to pile up again. So I think it's even just having an understanding of like what your general workflow is. Being so early in business as the agency, we're still kind of finding like what that footing is. But I think inevitably you're going to have ebbs and flows. So if you can step back from that, if your business is a little bit farther than ours is at this point, step back and say, all right, we know March through June is going to be hectic. How can we carve out and create space for people to recover and reset and rest? And any other time of the year, that would be my suggestion.
Devin, I had a question. This is Erin. So I made a comment in the chat about, it seems like Gina at 2 Days Off and you as well have a really matriarchal approach to leadership. And many of us work in more of a patriarchal leadership structure. And so I guess as someone who works in the latter, I'm curious if you have any advice or practice of like maybe pushing back or trying to maybe instill some of these more restful approaches to work, because I think there's a default for a lot of people, older gentlemen, especially in my firm, who like, there's a badge of honor that you get when you work 60 hours a week or whatever, more is more is more. So I'm just curious if you have any advice on how we might push back on that and try to instill some of these more matriarchal approaches in our own organizations.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome question. I have dealt with that before. I would say case studies. I'm good for digging up receipts. And that's generally because what numbers don't lie, as well as facts. And if I can prove that, hey, we can work 4 days a week and, you know, take a longer break on 4th of July or whatever, and still deliver the same way, just kind of providing like those facts. Because one thing I know is I cannot approach sustainability or even like this understanding of like rest and recuperation from an emotional place. I am not asking for, how do I word this? I am not asking for something that is a right, that is a given to me. Like we all have to rest. We all have to take a pause because we will crash and burn. Like, we're human beings. So the conversation I try to approach it is, I'm not asking you, I'm just telling you why I need this. And alternatively, if I do not receive this, this is what's going to happen to our team. This is what happens to the morale. This is what happens to our productivity. I remember, working for larger organizations, we would have these really high impact times, which would be great. But then like after that, I mean, the emails would pile up. Our morale just showing into work would be up. People would naturally just take longer lunch breaks because they're like, oh man, I got to go back to the office. Like it was just, you could see it. And so sometimes it's just, making little notes or documenting when we have those ebbs and flows in business and saying, all right, I've noticed this, and present that. And sometimes offering that up is extremely helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. I see a hand raised. I'm like filtering through. Nicole.
Hi, that's me. Hi, sorry. I can't see myself. I just wanted to comment on that just because I did that. I did what you're saying about 2 years ago. And I worked 5 days a week full time, and I went through a health issue. And sometimes that will motivate you like nothing else. I'm not saying you should attempt that, but it just made me realize that, to Devin's point, your time is your most precious resource. And I was wearing my Hot Mess Express with a badge of honor. And, you see those t-shirts and things like that. And it was like, this isn't funny anymore. It's sad. And so I had the most patriarchal boss on the planet. And I just said, I have to do this for myself. And so I kind of came in with that list of reasons and said, for my health, for these, these reasons, I feel like I can still do this job within 4 days a week. If I can't, we'll check in 3 months or 6 months or whatever, and you can evaluate me from there. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like I didn't think he would say yes. But he actually saw it as an opportunity and said, okay, I do actually think that you could do this within this amount of time, and, we'll check in and evaluate that. And then, of course, it did come with a little bit of a pay cut because you're not there in the office as much. So I was willing to sacrifice that. And it's allowed me the time that I needed in my family life to sort of balance things out. And I do feel more intentional when I'm here. I'm not taking long lunches and doing some of those things where you're avoiding the clock, basically. So I would say don't assume on the other end, put your case together and go for it, because if you want to be more focused and have that time, you owe it to yourself to do that, would just be my piece of advice. And I'm a lot happier now, and I feel like it's been a really good move. So good luck.
Thanks, Nicole. We have about 5 minutes left, Devin.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. So creating with intention, I'm going to move a little bit quicker here just for the sake of time, and you're always welcome to connect with me personally. But in a digital landscape, we talked about this, that promotes excess and encourages you to create more than what your audience needs or wants, in hopes that one message will land. So the question that I'm going to leave with you all to consider is, how can we combat this? And what that first sentence means is basically the way that like the algorithm and the powers that be in the digital landscape work is, if you create 5 pieces of assets, they're hoping that one of them just so happens to strike, just one of them happens to land or hit. And so that's what that first sentence means. And okay, how can we combat this? How can I be a little bit more intentional in the development process to make sure that we can cut out those 4 extras and really get to that one thing that is going to land without fail? And that's one thing on the case study that we know with 2 days off. We know exactly who that customer, who that constituent is. So the other question I want to leave you all with is, what's the one thing you want your brand or company to be known for? In the essence of time, I'm going to have you all, if you feel comfortable, dropping that in the comment section in the chat. If you feel comfortable or compelled, what is the one thing you want your brand or company to be known for? And it's one thing. It's not like a M dash, then more stuff. It's not a this or that. It's one thing, because that's what we have time for. Not in this scenario where we literally have 5 minutes, but it's what we have time for in life is what is that one thing that you're going to do and that you're just going to knock out of the park. And so we had some really good conversation with, both Nicole and Aaron talking about like burning out. And so these are the things that I know to be true, that I've experienced, and that I have navigated or have currently navigated. So burnout is real, but it's also relative. Burnout for every single person looks different. For me, yesterday I was burnt out. Like I was preparing for this. I had to adjust some things on my calendar. I had to take care of family. My dog like rolled in like mud that was very stinky and I had to like wash her. Like it was a lot of things back to back. And so my burnout is like, okay, I can't handle that many crises back to back. But for someone else who maybe likes to put out fires, that wouldn't burn them out. So just being in tune with what that is important. Decreasing work hours can increase productivity. I am a testament to that. I think my team is a testament to that. We do not need to work 40 hours to make impact, and you don't have to do it all. And quite honestly, your constituents don't want you to. If you are a hamburger shop, we'll go back to that. They're not looking for you to make ice cream. They're not looking for you to make dresses. They want you to be the one best hamburger spot that they can go to. So also thinking about that. And so just like minimalism and the process of purging excess, this is going to take time. When I purged my closet, I took about a year to really get to what are the essentials that I want to have. So when we're thinking about minimalism, but also even developing my team and thinking about how I can implement more process and strategy for us. So just know that this is going to take time. You don't have to like march up to your boss tomorrow and say, hey, we need to have a 4-day work week starting next Monday and all of these things, but really start to think about, okay, how can we do less of something so we can do more of this? How can I be here less so I can give more time to myself and to take care? So that is what I'm going to leave you with. I've left my contact information here. It's hello@leslieagency.com. We are at Leslie Agency on all social platforms. Feel free to connect with us. I'm pretty responsive. We do have Fridays off, so I will not respond to you on a Friday. But if you have anything else, please reach out to me. And I'm so thankful for spending time with you. And we have got a countdown on the screen. They are not playing, y'all. So there's my information, screenshot it. Otherwise, feel free to connect with me personally, but I appreciate all of you.
The coolest place you ever solo traveled, Devin?
Ooh, Senegal.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing a new way to do things. Less is more.
Yeah. Watch the documentaries from the minimalists too. Those were super helpful.